The camera opens on me, Sarah Mitchell, adjusting my aviator sunglasses as I stand beside a sleek Robinson R-66 helicopter. Ever had that moment when your entire family underestimated you, only for you to prove them wrong in the most spectacular way? That was me 3 months ago. Flash to a graduation ceremony at Westfield State University, Massachusetts. My younger brother receiving his diploma while my parents beam with pride. Cut back to me. While they were celebrating his achievement with the car they bought using my college fund, they had no idea I was about to make an entrance they'd never forget. Show brief glimpses of a family dinner years earlier. You don't need college, Sarah. You're not the academic type like your brother. My father's dismissive words still echo in my mind. Back to present day, me walking confidently. What they didn't know was that while they were focused on grooming the golden child, I was building something far greater than they could imagine. And yes, it involved this helicopter. Quick flash of me flying the helicopter, wind in my hair, absolute freedom. This is the story of how I went from the forgotten daughter to the one who literally overshadowed my brother's graduation day. And trust me, you'll want to stick around for this ride. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you've ever dreamed of proving someone wrong in the most epic way possible. Let's dive in. Growing up in suburban Boston, our family dynamic was always crystal clear. My parents, Richard and Karen Mitchell, had a vision for the American dream that centered around my brother, Jason. He was the investment, the one with the perfect grades, the sports trophies, and apparently all of their attention. My father built his accounting firm from nothing after his father helped him through college. And my mother was the quintessential supportive spouse who organized the neighborhood fundraisers and PTA meetings. They were respected pillars of our community, always obsessed with appearances and status. I was the afterthought, the spare. Sarah's just not academically inclined, they'd say at family gatherings, as if I wasn't standing right there. The painful truth? I actually had better grades than Jason until sophomore year of high school, when I realized nothing I did would ever be enough. That's when I stopped trying to impress them and started planning my escape. The summer before senior year, everyone gathered for my cousin's wedding in Cape Cod. I remember sitting at the kids' table despite being 17, while Jason, only 15, sat with the adults because he was having such interesting conversations about his future. That evening, Uncle Dave had too many gin and tonics and loudly asked my parents about their college savings plans. Sarah can get loans or find a trade school, my father announced casually. We're focusing on Jason's education. He's got Harvard potential. The entire table nodded approvingly while I sat there humiliated, pretending I hadn't heard. 2 months later, I discovered they had been systematically emptying my college fund since I was 14. The account that my grandparents had started for me drained. When confronted, my mother simply said, "We needed to secure Jason's future. You'll be fine. You're street smart." That night, I cried until I had no tears left. Then, I made a decision that would change everything. I had been working part-time at the local municipal airport, mostly answering phones and filing paperwork. What my family didn't know was that I had caught the attention of Eleanor Harding, a former Air Force pilot who now ran a successful aviation logistics company. She saw something in me that my own parents missed. "You have an analytical mind and incredible spatial awareness," she told me after watching me correctly identify an engine issue just by its sound. "Have you ever considered learning to fly?" Eleanor became the mentor my parents never were. In secret, she began teaching me everything about aviation and business. While my parents were attending Jason's debate tournaments, I was logging flight hours. While they were meeting with college counselors for him, I was learning how to build a business plan. Your parents' short-sightedness is their loss, Eleanor would say, but it might just be your greatest opportunity. By the time Jason was preparing for college, I had already earned my private pilot's license and was working on my commercial certification. Eleanor had introduced me to investors who were interested in our plan to revolutionize medical supply deliveries to rural hospitals. No one in my family had a clue. They were too busy planning Jason's future to notice I was building my own. When they announced at Thanksgiving dinner that they had used the family savings, including what was left of my fund, to put a down payment on a BMW for Jason as a graduation gift, I simply smiled and excused myself to take a work call. Little did they know I was finalizing the paperwork on my first helicopter. Come celebrate our son's achievement and Harvard acceptance. The golden child was completing his first major milestone on the path they'd carefully crafted for him. I received my invitation 3 weeks after everyone else, almost as an afterthought. "Oh, Sarah, we assumed you'd be too busy with that airport job to attend," my mother said when I mentioned the delay. I simply smiled and confirmed I wouldn't miss it for the world. They looked relieved that I was finally showing support for your brother. In reality, I was coordinating with Eleanor and our team for what would become the most dramatic entrance of my life. The morning of graduation, my parents barely acknowledged me at breakfast. They were too busy fussing over Jason's graduation robes and my father's speech he'd prepared for the extravagant post-ceremony party they'd planned at the country club. "We have invited the Whitmores. Their daughter is pre-law at Harvard. Good connection for Jason," my father mentioned, not even looking in my direction. My mother was coordinating with the photographer they'd hired. "We need those perfect shots for the living room wall," she insisted. I excused myself early, saying I needed to finish a shift at the airport. My mother simply nodded while adjusting Jason's tie. As I left, I heard my father say, "At least she's responsible enough to hold down that receptionist job." If only they knew I was actually the COO of Skyline Medical Logistics, the startup that had just secured $3.2 million in second-round funding. The graduation ceremony was set for 2 p.m. at Westfield High's football field. I arrived early and sat in the back row, watching my parents work the crowd like politicians. They introduced Jason to everyone important: local business owners, school board members, their country club friends. I heard snippets. Harvard in the fall, full ride plus merit scholarship. So proud. Not once did they mention they had diverted my education fund to make it happen. At 1:45, I slipped away, sending a text to Eleanor. Operation Wake Up Call is a go. The ceremony proceeded as expected, speeches about bright futures, dreams, and potential. The principal praised the exceptional class, especially calling out academic star Jason Mitchell, who will be attending Harvard in the fall. My parents beamed from their VIP front row seats. When Jason's name was called to receive his diploma, my father actually stood up, clapping vigorously, breaking graduation etiquette. Several people looked annoyed, but no one said anything to the prominent community member. After the diplomas were distributed, the principal was midway through his closing remarks when the distinctive sound of helicopter blades cut through the air. At first, it was just background noise, but it grew louder until it was impossible to ignore. Heads turned as my Robinson R66, piloted by Eleanor, approached the field and hovered about 400 feet above the ceremony. The principal paused his speech, clearly flustered. "It seems we have an unexpected, aerial visitor." My father looked outraged at the interruption of his son's perfect day. My mother appeared mortified at the disruption to their carefully orchestrated event. Jason just looked confused, shielding his eyes to look up like everyone else. The helicopter circled once, then hovered near the parking lot adjacent to the parking lot where there was ample space. As it descended for landing, a banner unfurled from its side. "Congratulations, graduates! Skyline Medical Logistics." My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Some idiot is crashing the ceremony with a helicopter? So disrespectful." I didn't respond. Instead, I stood up and made my way toward the parking lot, heart pounding as I prepared for the confrontation that was 4 years in the making. As the dust settled from the landing, Eleanor emerged from the pilot's side and gave me a thumbs up from a distance. She would stay with the helicopter while I made my entrance. I straightened my tailored business suit, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the ceremony that had fallen into confused murmuring. The principal was trying to regain control. "Let's please return our attention to—" But it was too late. All eyes were on me as I walked confidently across the field. I walked straight through the crowd of graduates and parents, all eyes following me. The whispers started immediately. "Isn't that the Mitchell girl? What's she doing? Is that her helicopter?" I kept my gaze fixed ahead, straight toward where my family sat in the front row. My father's face transitioned from confusion to recognition to fury in the span of seconds. My mother's perfect smile froze in place, her social mask firmly intact despite the chaos I'd just introduced. Jason just looked bewildered, clutching his diploma and Harvard acceptance letter that had been arranged for the perfect photo op. "Sarah, what on earth are you doing?" my father hissed as I approached. "You're ruining your brother's special day." I smiled, the calm kind of smile that comes from knowing exactly what you're about to do. "Actually, I came to give Jason his graduation gift." The principal had given up trying to regain control of the ceremony. Most people were now openly watching our family drama unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my voice just enough for the nearby rows to hear, "I'm Sarah Mitchell, Jason's sister. I wanted to personally congratulate all of today's graduates." I turned to my brother. "Especially you, Jason. Mom and Dad made sure you had every advantage, including my college fund." My mother gasped. My father grabbed my arm and whispered harshly, "This is not the time or place." I gently but firmly removed his hand. "Actually, this is exactly the right time and place. 4 years ago, you told me I wasn't worth investing in. You said I wasn't the academic type and emptied the account my grandparents had set up for my education to fund Jason's future and buy him that BMW parked over there." The nearby parents shifted uncomfortably. The Whitmores, the Harvard connection my parents were so eager to impress, exchanged glances. "But what you didn't know," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "is that while you were focused on creating the perfect path for your son, I was building my own. That helicopter isn't just for show. It belongs to Skyline Medical Logistics, the company I co-founded with my mentor. We deliver critical medical supplies to rural hospitals across New England." My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Sarah, stop this nonsense immediately." "It's not nonsense, Dad. It's a company valued at $12 million after our last funding round. I'm the chief operating officer and a 38% shareholder." I turned to Jason, whose expression had shifted from confusion to shock. "Congratulations on Harvard, Jason. It's a tremendous achievement. I know how hard you worked for it." And I meant it. This wasn't his fault. He was just as much a pawn in our parents' game as I was. "As for my gift," I continued, pulling an envelope from my jacket pocket, "I'm offering you an internship at Skyline for the summer. You'll be paid fairly, and you'll learn things Harvard can't teach you. Your choice, no pressure." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. My mother had completely abandoned her social smile and was now looking at me like I was an alien who had abducted her real daughter. "This is outrageous," my father finally exploded, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You show up in that thing, interrupt the ceremony, embarrass our family." "No, Dad," I cut him off, my voice finally breaking slightly. "You embarrassed me when you told everyone at Uncle Dave's wedding that I wasn't worth investing in. You embarrassed me every time you dismissed my achievements because they didn't fit your plan. You embarrassed yourselves when you stole my future to fund his." Jason stood up, still clutching his diploma. "Is that true? You took Sarah's college money for me? For the car?" The look of genuine hurt on his face made me realize something. He hadn't known. All these years, I'd partly blamed him for being the favorite, but he'd been in the dark too. My father looked around, suddenly aware of all the witnesses to our family drama. His carefully cultivated image was crumbling in real time. We made decisions for this family based on who would benefit most. "You mean who would reflect best on you," I corrected. Then I took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to ruin the day. I came to show you that your lack of faith in me was the biggest mistake you ever made, and to show myself that I didn't need your approval to succeed." I handed Jason the internship envelope, then turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, but I didn't look back. I walked straight toward the helicopter where Eleanor was waiting, the blades already beginning to spin up. The last thing I saw before boarding was Jason running after me, waving the envelope, his graduation cap falling off in his hurry. The helicopter lifted off, leaving the chaos of the graduation ceremony behind. Eleanor didn't say a word until we were well above the town. "You did it," she finally said through the headset. "How do you feel?" I honestly didn't know. Relief, vindication, and a strange emptiness all competed for dominance. "Like I just jumped out of a plane, and I'm still waiting to hit the ground," I replied. My phone exploded with notifications. Texts from my parents ranged from furious, "How dare you embarrass us like this?" to suddenly conciliatory, "We need to talk about this as a family." I silenced it and focused on the horizon as Eleanor flew us back to our company headquarters. 3 days of radio silence followed. I immersed myself in work, finalizing a contract with a hospital network in Vermont that would expand our operations significantly. On the 4th day, a text from Jason. "Can we meet? Alone." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between his summer job and my office. I arrived early, anxiety gnawing my stomach. When Jason walked in, he looked different somehow, less like the golden child and more like a young man grappling with uncomfortable truths. "I had no idea," he said after we'd sat down, "about your college fund, about any of it. I swear, Sarah." "I believe you," I said, "and I meant it. It wasn't your fault." "But I benefited from it," he replied, running his hands through his hair in a gesture so reminiscent of our father it was startling. "The car, the prep courses, the private tutoring, while you were working at that airport. At least, I thought you were just working there." I explained everything, how Eleanor had recognized my potential, how we'd built Skyline from concept to thriving business, how I'd earned my pilot's license and business credentials simultaneously. "That's incredible," Jason said, looking genuinely impressed. "Mom and Dad have been fighting non-stop since the graduation. Dad's furious about the public humiliation, but Mom keeps saying they should have seen the signs that you were doing something big." "And you?" I asked. "Are you angry about what I did?" Jason was quiet for a moment. "I was at first. It was supposed to be my day, you know. But then I realized something. Every day has been my day in our family. Every achievement, every milestone, it was always about me. I never questioned it. He looked up. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have seen what was happening. That was the moment something shifted between us, from the rivalry our parents had cultivated to something that felt like actual siblinghood. About your offer, Jason continued, pulling out the crumpled envelope. I want to take the internship. Not because of Harvard or my resume, but because I want to know who my sister actually is. 2 weeks later, Jason started at Skyline. He was a natural with logistics systems, bringing fresh perspectives that even Eleanor hadn't considered. It turned out the golden child actually had talents our parents hadn't programmed into him. My parents took longer to come around. My father made several attempts to discuss this helicopter business, clearly hoping to find a way to take credit or exert control. I maintained professional but firm boundaries. My mother, surprisingly, was the first to truly acknowledge what had happened. She came to my apartment one evening, unannounced. I saw your feature in Boston Business Quarterly, she said, holding up the magazine with my picture on the cover. Under 30, New England's rising entrepreneurs. I brought you this, she said, handing me a folder of documents. Inside was evidence of a newly established educational trust with her as the contributor. It's not the same amount they took from you. It's more. I've been saving from my personal accounts for the past 2 months. Why? I asked, genuinely confused by this development. Because I failed you, she said simply, tears forming. I got so caught up in your father's vision of success that I forgot to see you, really see you. When you landed that helicopter, I realized we'd been measuring achievement all wrong. It wasn't immediate forgiveness, but it was a start. Over the next few months, our family dynamic underwent a seismic shift. Jason finished his summer internship and went to Harvard with a much broader perspective. He called weekly, not to brag about his achievements, but to genuinely check in on me and the business. My father took longer to come around. His pride was wounded deeply, both by my public revelation and by the fact that I'd succeeded without his guidance or approval. The turning point came when one of his biggest clients needed emergency medical transport for his wife from their remote vacation home in Maine. When he learned that Skyline was the company that quite possibly saved her life, something finally clicked. He showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon, looking uncomfortable in the sleek, modern space so different from his traditional accounting firm. I was wrong, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I made judgments about your potential based on nothing but my own narrow definition of success. I missed seeing who you really are. It wasn't a perfect apology, but from my father, it was monumental. 6 months after the graduation incident, we had our first real family dinner in years. The old dynamics had been shattered, making room for something more authentic. Jason talked about changing his major to include healthcare management. My father asked genuine questions about Skyline's operations. My mother showed me old photographs she'd found of me as a child, pointing out the determination in my eyes that she'd overlooked. As for the BMW that had been purchased with my education fund, Jason sold it and used the money to invest in Skyline's newest initiative, a scholarship program for young women interested in aviation and business. The Mitchell Sisters Fund, he called it, though I don't have sisters. When I questioned the name, he just smiled and said, "It's for all the sisters whose brothers got the BMW." Eleanor remains my mentor and now serves as Skyline's chairperson. Sometimes I catch her watching my family interactions with a knowing smile, proud of the transformation she helped set in motion. The truth is, landing that helicopter at Jason's graduation wasn't really about revenge. It was about being seen, truly seen, for who I am and what I'm capable of. Sometimes people need a dramatic wake-up call to recognize the potential they've been overlooking all along. So here I am today, flying high, both literally and figuratively. That helicopter landing changed everything, not just my family dynamics, but how I view myself. I no longer measure my worth through my parents' eyes or against my brother's achievements. Success isn't about Ivy League degrees or luxury cars. It's about building something meaningful on your own terms. Our company has expanded to serve 5 states now, and Jason's working with us part-time while finishing at Harvard. My parents? They're learning, slowly but surely, that there are many paths to success. Mom even took a flying lesson last month, said she wanted to understand my world better. If you're watching this and feeling overlooked or underestimated, remember, sometimes the greatest motivation comes from those who don't believe in you. Use that fire. Build in silence. And when you're ready, make your entrance so spectacular they can't possibly ignore you anymore. Thanks for coming along on this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the people who underestimate you today might just be applauding you tomorrow. Until next time, keep flying high and never let anyone clip your wings.